So over the past several videos, I've been talking a lot about e-bike regulations. And one thing that I have found out is a lot of people who deal with e-bikes have no idea why these particular rules are in place when it comes to the e-bike class levels. So right now, a lot of you are probably familiar with the class levels on an e-bike, and that's class 1, class 2, and class 3. But the question is, where did they come from, and why is 750 watts an actual set limit on this? Well, there's a whole history behind this whole entire process. So let's start off with the actual watts. Why is 750 watts the actual limit when it comes to the nominal power for an e-bike? This all goes back to around 1780 when horsepower was actually defined by somebody called James Watt. So back in the 1780s, James Watt was actually trying to sell steam equipment to local farmers. And the way that he had to translate it was basically horsepower. So what he did is he calculated what a small pony would actually produce, and he calculated that out to be 1 horsepower. Later, when electricity became a more common thing, they found that the standard for 1 horsepower was right around 750 watts. So fast forward all the way to the year 2000-ish, and lawmakers were looking at how to define e-bike power. Yes, all the way back in the 2000s, they were talking about this. So the way that they wanted to define it was to simply use the law that was already in place for mopeds and scooters. Basically, if it's above 1 horsepower, then it's considered a moped or a scooter. And when I say scooter, I mean this type of scooter, not this type of scooter. So as you know, in your area, there's probably some rules and regulations around these type of scooters and how powerful they can be before you actually have to register them. And that limit seems to be right around 1 horsepower. And knowing the calculation of 750 watts equals 1 horsepower, well, it was pretty simple in 2002 for them to implement into federal law that 1 horsepower is going to be the maximum nominal power for an e-bike to not be classified as a moped. So anything that was over that 1 horsepower or 750 watt setting would be considered a motorized vehicle and would have to fall under the DOT rules when it comes to actually registering, inspecting, and all those rules that you find when you're looking at a motorcycle or a car. So that was all the way back in 2002. And you might be thinking, well, where did the class rules come from that we currently see from class 1, class 2, and class 3? Quickly, let's define those classes. A class 1 is non-throttled, pedal assist only, all the way up to 20 miles an hour with a nominal power of 750 watts. Class 2 is 20 miles an hour peak with throttle or pedal assist, still with that 750 watt maximum nominal power. Now, a class 3 is no throttle up to 28 miles an hour, still with that 750 watt sustained nominal power. So the classes were actually defined and developed by a group called People for Bikes. This was a group that worked closely with bike companies like Bosch, Trek, and Specialized because they wanted to develop a class level that they could present to legislation to say, hey, these bikes are not motorized vehicles and they should be allowed on these particular trails, roadways, and other places where motorized vehicles are not allowed. Basically trying to classify them as what we would call a bike that they could ride with standard bikes. But now we can see we're running into problems where they're trying to declassify all of the bikes, especially in New Jersey where they already did, and then set them all back up as motorized vehicles. What's going to really surprise you guys, as I know it surprised me, is that this started around 2014 and 2015. So this hasn't been around all that long. E-bikes had been around for quite a bit longer before that, but they weren't mainstream. Once they started getting mainstream, we started seeing e-mountain bikes, e-mopeds, all these things in bigger cities and on your local trail systems. That's when People for Bikes really had to jump in and work with these companies to come up with classifications to make these bikes legal to ride where normal bikes can actually ride. Well, back in 2015, California, the first one to adopt pretty much every single rule, whether you like it or not, was the first one to fully and officially adopt the class rules. So they took in the class 1, class 2, and class 3 rules, and separated them out from what a motorized vehicle would be classified, therefore opening up a lot of trail systems, pathways, and bike lanes to e-bikes, which before would have been classified as possibly motorized vehicles. So as you guys can see, the reason why we have a 750 watt rule is simply just because that was the way we measured mopeds and scooters back in the day. And how they came up with the 750 watts was simply because it's 1 horsepower. Whenever we're measuring a gas engine, we do it based off of horsepower, but we had to have a way to actually calculate that for electric motors. And 750 watts equaling 1 horsepower keeps it in that safe zone. So now that places like New Jersey are actually classifying all e-bikes as a motorized vehicle, you now have e-bikes that are well under 1 horsepower that are not actually e-bikes. They're motorized vehicles now in that state, which makes me wonder, how does New Jersey actually look at gas-powered mopeds? So for instance, here in Missouri, if it's 49 cc's and less, you don't have to register it. You can ride this on the street. But if it's over 50 cc's, my understanding is that you actually have to register it and have insurance. How does New Jersey actually handle that? If you're from New Jersey, do you guys know how they handle the gas mopeds that are the lower powered under that 1 horsepower range? Because if they're treating them differently than an e-bike now, that's kind of crazy. So now you guys know exactly where the 750 watts came from. It's 1 horsepower equivalent. And you also know exactly how the class levels were created and why they were created. And the cool thing is, in this process, I found out that it was a group of people that just got together, worked with bike companies and motor manufacturers to come up with a class regulation and get this thing organized to where they could take it to legislation and actually say, hey, these are not motorized vehicles. These are lower powered e-bikes that can actually ride with standard bicycles on bike paths and bike trails. And over the years, I feel like we have fought and fought and fought to actually open up trail systems. So let me know what you guys think. Did you guys know about how the classes were actually set up? Did you understand this 750 watts equals 1 horsepower and how the 1 horsepower actually came about and why they actually picked the 750 watts? I thought that was all super interesting. And now that we're all a little bit more educated on this, I think that if you have a conversation with somebody, that's how you should approach it. Explain to them how this whole process started and the reasoning behind it, because there was actually a long-lived process for this whole entire thing. And now it seems like even people in the e-bike industry have no idea why these rules are in place. And so now there's no reason to not be able to explain this to people whenever they ask, why is the 750 watt rule there? And also, what is the deal with the class levels when it comes to e-bikes? Let me know what your thoughts are below now that you know a little bit more about this. Should they change them? Should they improve them? Should they be modified, or should they just be completely scrapped and classified all as motorized vehicles? All right, guys, you know what to do. Get out there and ride your e-bike.